What if I told you that 6Ps lets you exit rich? You're going to say to yourself, Eric, what are you talking about? What I'm talking about is the 6P method, the amazing book, Exit Rich. I know, I bought the book. That's how much I loved this conversation that I had with Michelle Seiler Tucker. You're going to find out about her book, about her business, about how you can create wealth through business, how to actually design yourself for a healthy exit. This is some serious knowledge that you're about to get dropped on you, and also get the book. But anyways, let's jump in. This is Michelle Seiler Tucker on the DiscoPosse podcast, and it starts right now. This is cool. You are in for a treat. My name is Eric Wright. I'm the host of the DiscoPosse podcast, and I know it was a treat when I had this conversation with Michelle Seiler Tucker. Michelle has just an incredible personality that reminds you that perseverance and getting to data over opinion and just driving through and getting stuff done is an incredible way to prove yourself out. Michelle has done it. She has literally owned and successfully sold an incredible number of businesses. You're going to find out her story. You're going to find out her 6P method that's featured in her upcoming book, which is no longer upcoming because at the time you listen to this, if you cut on the audio version, it's available right now. So you can get Exit Rich. Links down below, so make sure you do drop in. Get that. It's a really fantastic book. Gets you access to a lot more than just the book itself. Oh, by the way, speaking of clicking down below, you see that subscribe button? Can you do that? That would be really cool. Hit that subscribe button because it helps to make sure that people are watching. Amazing people like you. Thank you. Oh, wait, we got a big announcement coming up. Oh, save that for later. All right, let's jump in. This is Michelle Seiler Tucker. This is an amazing conversation. Check it out, and you're learning how to exit rich on the DiscoPosse podcast.
Hi, I'm Michelle Seiler Tucker, and you're listening to the DiscoPosse podcast.
Well, thank you very much. I was very happy to see you show up as a potential guest here because you are doing work that I think is going to have a pretty profound effect on a lot of folks that are listening to the show. Because we've got a lot of folks who are founders, a lot of people that are, at different phases of building businesses. And you've done something that you're in the business of, things that can help those folks. And even better, you've brought a lot of great information to the market. You've got a recent book called Exit Rich. We got a lot of stuff we'll talk about. So with that, Michelle, do you want to give yourself a quick bio to folks that are brand new to you? And then we'll talk about the book and your background and what brought you to write it.
Sure. All right. So I'm not sure what you want me to say, but I'm an M&A, mergers and acquisitions master intermediary. Been selling companies a little over 20 years. I personally sold 500 businesses. My team has sold myself and my team have sold over 1,000 companies, and we've done thousands upon thousands of valuations. I also specialize in buying, selling, fixing, growing companies. So I'll buy businesses, flip them. I partner with business owners, investing my time, energy, effort, and capital and resources to put business owners on a build to sell program. And like I said, what we really specialize in doing is fixing businesses because 8 out of 10 businesses will not sell, according to Steve Forbes. And so we fix businesses, we grow them, we put them on a build to sell model, and we merge businesses and sell businesses. So that's what we do at any given time. I own 5 to 10 businesses that I'm actually building to sell.
Now that obviously has come from, you've effectively built a strong system around what it is you need to do to be successful in this. I'm curious, Michelle, what was the background that brought you to taking this on as a task in your first time?
Sure. And I forgot to mention I'm an author of 3 books.
That's right. Yeah, not just one book. Of course, Exit Rich the Most is one we'll talk about, but we'll talk about the others as well. You're very prolific. Oh, we just muted you for some reason. It's always the fun part about recording on the fly. We lost your audio. Uh-oh. We lost your microphone. Still no audio coming out. That was the odd part. We had it for a moment. No audio yet? Uh-oh. We may need to double check here. You're not muted on this side, so I'm not sure what's happened here. Nothing yet. Not yet, no. No. Oh, I hear something.
Hello?
All right, now we're back in business. There we go.
Good. Yeah.
Okay.
When this cable gets bent too much, it affects the audio.
Okay, we're back in business.
Can you hear me? What happened?
Yeah,
When
we're
that cable gets bent too
What
much,
cable?
the cable connecting the mic, when it gets bent too much,
What was it bent at?
it was bent all the way downward. So
Then what you might want to do is take it and tape it.
one thing,
Did you hear me?
notice was this, that when you put it down here, it starts bending out the bottom.
Okay, so what you need to do is get tape and tape it so it doesn't do that, right? All right, how long are we going to be together?
We've got an hour, so.
Oh, good, because he said 75 minutes. I'm like, 75 minutes is crazy.
I'm
not doing 75.
I leave a little buffer just in case we have overrun. So.
Okay, cool. So we got an hour. Okay. Yeah. All right. Do we need to start over?
We'll edit that section out. We'll just kind of the question that I wanted to bring is, your first, what brought you into being in the business of buying business and mergers and acquisitions, Michelle?
So I've always been an entrepreneur. I've owned many different companies, even from a very young age. And I did go into franchise sales, franchise development, and franchise consulting, and sold hundreds and hundreds of franchises. But I kept having lots of buyers ask me for existing businesses. And I didn't have any existing businesses because I was selling new franchises. And I was actually a partner in some different franchisors, an equity partner. Then I decided, there's so many buyers out here for good existing businesses versus new startup franchises that I should start my mergers and acquisitions firm. And that's really how I got started.
Now, you talked about being an early entrepreneur. What actually gave you the the entrepreneurial bug? Was it, because I'm imagining you probably, that's something we develop, but we learn about often quite early in our lives.
Yeah, I don't say there's anything that gave me. I didn't really grow up in a family of entrepreneurs. My dad had a couple of businesses. He wasn't really, I wouldn't say he was very successful, but he had a few businesses. Other than that, I didn't really grow up with entrepreneurs. I just knew from early on that I didn't like to be told what to do. And I want to do my own thing, march to the beat of my own drum. And I just always knew I wanted to be my own boss.
Nice. Yeah. My favorite thing is founders often describe themselves as unemployable, just because it's like they know what they want to achieve, and they certainly they can't take direction in order to get to it. So
yeah, I mean, we still got to be employed by our clients, right? Our clients employ us. And
that's a
if
very
we
good
don't
point.
listen to our clients and don't follow our clients' instructions, sometimes we can become unemployed very easily. So rather you want to be employed or be told what to do, even if you own your own boss, you still are answering to somebody.
Now, when you were working through in the franchise area, which is developed on the idea of using a systematic approach, when did you sort of see that as an opportunity to go outside and bring that systematic approach then to, as you said, like existing businesses? And I'm curious that first one or the first few that you decided to take on.
I'm sorry, what systematic approach are you referring to?
Or just like, when did you see how you could take the practices that you had learned from working in the franchise and then bring those methodologies to an existing business?
Yeah, so it's extremely different. And if you're not familiar with it, well, most people aren't. It's very different. I mean, becoming a partner with a new franchisor, and doing franchise sales, franchise development, and franchise consulting is extremely different than selling existing businesses and fixing and growing and building to sell existing businesses. There's really very little similarity. The only similarity is maybe in the existing franchisor, because existing franchisor really has to operate on what I call the 6Ps, the ST6Ps that we talk about in my book, Exit Rich. If they don't build a solid foundation, a solid infrastructure on the 6Ps, then they're not going to be sustainable. They're not going to be able to scale. They're not going to be able to stay in business for very long. So there's some similarities there as far as the main franchise corporation. As far as selling new franchises, it's completely different than selling existing businesses. There's really zero similarities, because for a new franchise, we're looking for the franchisee. We're qualifying the franchisee on a financial capacity and on skill sets. And you do that with existing businesses. You qualify buyers on their financial capacity and their skill sets. But with a new franchise, we're also really strongly looking at demographics and where we should place this new franchisee, what strip mall, what location we should put them in, and then we're helping them hire their people, and we're helping them really base their business and start their business on what I call the ST6Ps. With an existing business, they already have the location, they already have the people in place, right? They already have and are operating on many of the 6Ps, maybe not all, but some of them. So there is some similarities, like I said, in the franchisor type of it. But as far as selling new franchises compared to existing businesses, it's completely different.
When you saw the opportunity to affect somebody's growth and help, as you said, like to build towards sale, what's exciting to you about seeing that? Obviously there's both a business and a people impact. I'd love to hear what drew you to be able to bring people through that journey to prepare them for sale.
You mean for an existing or for a new?
Yeah, for an existing.
What prepared me? I think it's owning many different companies and many different verticals. Sitting behind a desk, knowing what works, what doesn't. Really figuring out, doesn't matter what industry you're in, the 6Ps are the 6Ps, and they, it's a foundation that you really need in every vertical, regardless. And I think that's kind of what prepared me, just seeing what works, what doesn't work. And, most business owners, a lot of business owners are not sellable. Like I said before, 80% of businesses don't sell. And the reasons for those are all similar. Business owners really make the same mistakes over and over and over again. And so that's, spending 20 plus years in the trenches of selling franchises and then selling businesses. I think all of that is what prepared me, not to mention my own companies that I've operated.
And that's the interesting thing, as you said, a lot of it's repeatable things that you see. But for those business builders and owners, I think the tough part is they're very sort of myopic in their view. They can't see outside of their own set of running the organization. It's probably, and this is why they need, you to come in and say, look, I'm looking in at what you're doing, and I've seen this play out, and it's not going to play out well, right? What's the reception when you begin to consult through that process and have to kind of show people the warts of the challenges that they're facing?
So, some are open to change and some are not. I always say you can only grow the business as much as you can grow the owner. I don't know if you've ever watched the show Marcus Lemonis, The Prophets on CNBC, but, he gives them clear instructions of what to do and what to change. And they all push back. I don't think anybody just takes it and does it. Nobody really follows his lead and his instructions, even though he's really clearly the expert. And same thing with me. I'm clearly the expert at what I do, So yeah, we get a lot of pushback because, again, they're entrepreneurs. They don't want to be told what to do. They don't want to answer to anybody. And, like I said, and it's tough because you're right. I mean, they don't see things. When you're in your fog, it's foggy, and you really need an outsider's perspective, to help really read the warning signs and keep you out of the danger zone. But business owners have to be willing to listen. They have to be willing to, get advice from experts, somebody who's been down their road before, and they have to be willing to change and make change. And some are, some aren't. I've sat in meetings and told business owners, don't tell your employees that you're selling your business. And the next thing they do is turn around and tell all their employees. And then they wonder why 50% of the workforce quits, So it's just, it's just business owners want to do things their own way. So it's really our job to try to get the business owners to understand that this is for your own good. This is for your protection. This is to help protect your company and help maximize your value. And that's what we do. We don't go in and force things. We do it from a educational perspective versus just trying to slam something down their throat.
And luckily, you've got the believability because you've got proof in execution, right? And I think that will hopefully that helps those founders to at least trust. But like you said, there's the psychology of the founder. They're pretty sure they've got the right idea, and the market just isn't ready. Versus, maybe you need to meet in the middle with the market, right?
Right. Put yourself in their shoes. If you're running your business and you're doing the day-to-day and you're doing all this stuff, and somebody comes in and tells you you're doing everything wrong, the first thing you're going to do is push back.
That's right.
So you don't want to go in there pushing, because then you're going to automatically get pushback. So you want to really go in there and look at all the things that they're doing right and highlight all the things that they're doing right, and then come in and bring in the areas of opportunity to where they can really affect change and growth.
When you raised it earlier already, you talked about, like, we have to listen to our clients and ultimately our customers, right? And that is something that quite often I'll say it's a dichotomy of the founder, that they have to be they have to be aiming towards a vision that's strong, a mission that's big quite often. And it's a weird thing of, like, they have to listen to the market, but they also have to create a market sometimes. So when you're working with founders, like, how do you kind of merge the reality of the market that they're facing, and yet help them to maintain their original vision? Or is it possible? I'm just curious in how that's played out in some of the examples you've gone through.
How do I help? I'm trying to understand your question.
Yeah, so because a founder's vision is often built on, like, we are preparing the world for what it doesn't know it needs. Like
Kind of like Steve Jobs did when he came back to Apple.
Right. But it's a tough thing when they have to survive in order to execute that vision. And how do you bring the reality of market economics and survival to still staying on the path to executing those big visions?
Well, I tell you, I don't know how much research you've done on the business landscape in the United States. And I think, I'm going to take a few minutes to educate. But when I wrote my very first book, Sell Your Business for More Than It's Worth, in 2013, and did the research, back then, 95% of all startups from 1 to 5 years would go out of business, right?
Right.
So when I wrote Exit Rich in 2019, 2020, before the pandemic occurred, and did the exact same research, I learned that the business landscape has actually flip-flopped. It's only 30% now of startups that will go out of business. Those 1 to 5 years are not at great risk anymore. Only 30%, which is good news to Startup Nation. However, out of 27.6 million companies, those businesses that have been in business 10 years or longer, 70% will go out of business. It used to be if you're in business 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you're in business for the long haul. Not anymore. The longer you're in business, the more you're at risk of going out of business. Now, you've heard about the big public companies. Toys R Us, been in business 75 years, goes out of business. Steinmart, been in business forever, goes out of business. Pier 1, Montgomery Ward's is in trouble. JCPenney's is in trouble. Jamboree goes out of business. Godiva Chocolate closes down 1,500 locations. GNC closes down 900 locations. Blockbuster went out of business because they saw Netflix. They saw the writing on the wall. They had an opportunity to buy Netflix, and they did nothing at all, and ended up going out of business. That's the big public companies. What you're not hearing about, because the media doesn't talk about it, are all the private companies on every street corner in every town in every state across our great nation. These business owners are going out of business. They're exiting poor, not exiting rich, like my book says. They're selling for pennies on the dollar. They're closing their business. And many of them are filing bankruptcy. And they're losing not just their business assets, but their personal assets too, because most business owners pierce that corporate veil. So why is that? Well, I'll tell you why that is. The number one reason why the business landscape has changed and flip-flopped before the pandemic is because business owners stopped doing one thing. They stopped doing a lot of things, but the biggest thing is lack of aim. Aim is always innovate and market. Always innovate and market. And many of these business owners get stuck in their ideas of the way they started their business, and they want to do things the way they've always done them. You're either growing or dying. There is no in between. Growing or dying. Blockbuster did nothing different. Toys R Us did nothing different in 75 years. So business owners have to continue to innovate. If you don't innovate, you will die. If you don't innovate and market, you will die. So to answer your question, I educate business owners on, okay, this is how you started your business. This is the basis, of your innovation, but you haven't done anything new in 20 years. And here's the bottom line. Consumers don't purchase products and services the way they used to. Whoever makes it easiest for the consumer to do business with you is a company that's going to win. Amazon is winning because Amazon doesn't really innovate. Think about it. What does Amazon do? They make it so easy for the consumer to purchase products. You can practically buy anything, including a horse, and have it delivered to your house in 2 days. So not only do you have to innovate, but you have to go back to the consumer and ask the consumer, what do you need? What do you want? How can I make it easier for you to do business with our company? Business owners stop innovating, they stop marketing, and most importantly, they stop asking the customer, the client, the consumer, what do you need? What do you want? Or be preemptive and figure out what they want and what they need, like Steve Jobs did. Here's the other thing. If you've been in business 20, 30, 40 years, your customers are probably aging out.
Right.
You've done nothing new and nothing innovative in which to keep those consumers doing business with you. But more importantly than that, going after the other generations, Generation X, millennials, right?
Yeah. Now this is interesting, and like the statistics you talked about, like there's a total inversion, and unfortunately, people are still hung on the metrics they remember. They know the stats of 95% plus of startups will fail. We still quote those numbers, so
But it's wrong.
right. This is the horrifying thing about, in the same way people always say you never get fired for buying IBM. I know 11 people that have been fired for buying IBM. It's in the end, we take this kind of like witty sort of stat that we can have, and it outlives its reality. So what's missing, Michelle? Like, because you're in front of this stuff all the time. Like, how is the market and well, definitely the media, not grabbing onto this story and talking about it, because it's a huge opportunity for folks to get started.
And that's what's so shocking to me too. I've had this conversation with my publicist. Why isn't the media talking about this stuff? And he's like, because it's not big news. Toys R Us is big news. Kmart goes out of business, big news. Godiva closing down 1,500 locations, big news. But the private company that has one location, has been in business for 20 years, who cares? Media doesn't care. It's not big news for them. And so nobody's really talking about this stuff. That's why I wrote Exit Rich. That's why I wanted to start the conversation. That's why I wanted to really, help as many people as I can. I've been on over 200 podcasts in the last, month or two, so that I can get the message out there that so many businesses are failing, and these are the reasons they're failing. I mean, small business is the backbone of our economy. There's 30.2 million businesses in the United States, employing over half the U.S. workforce. If we lose small business in the United States, we lose jobs. You lose jobs, you lose spending power. You lose spending power, more businesses shut down. It's a domino effect, and you lose even more jobs. So if we don't get behind small business, help small business owners, help entrepreneurs, stay successful, build a sustainable business that's scalable, that is sellable one day, you're going to have more and more and more bankruptcies. I mean, there were more bankruptcies in 2019, even before the pandemic, than in any other year.
Well, and that's always the interesting thing. And of course, through the course of the pandemic, the world has been shaken up, and it's hard for us to measure, when the effects will be felt. But this is, and again, interesting that you brought up, right? Like the bankruptcies had risen to incredible levels pre-pandemic. So this was already in play, and people don't see that. They just look and they'll say, oh, well, of course the bankruptcy went up. We've been in a global pandemic. Like, no, this was the writing was already on the wall.
Yeah, all these statistics I'm quoting to you is way before pandemic. It's even more gloom and doom now. But I mean, you do have more and more businesses that have started up in 2020 than any year before. And some of these startups are really doing well. And like I said, startups only have a 30% risk of going out of business now. The big difference between startups now and startups before the pandemic are a lot of these entrepreneurs are solving problems. They're not just opening up another coffee shop on a block when you already got 6 coffee shops, or another ice cream store on a street when you already got 10 other ice cream stores. They're actually solving problems. They're doing online, open up e-commerce businesses, manufacturing, online businesses. They're really solving problems, and that's what entrepreneurship is all about. It's not just about opening another ice cream store and cannibalizing the marketplace. It's about going out and figuring out what the problem is and then coming up with a solution. That's what entrepreneurialism is all about.
And if you look at today, the needs to build a startup and sort of the capital impact of so different than they were when, like, a 10-year-old business, even especially 20-year-old business, right? To build a company today is, an online process, and it's, how exciting is it to like what we've got ahead of us right now, Michelle. Like you can come up with an idea, you can build a business, and you can be online before the day is done.
Yeah, it's so exciting because, when I started, gosh, when did the online bubble start? What year was that?
Yeah, well, the first one, right? The 2001.com
Yeah,
bubble was,
2001. Yeah.
yeah.
Nowadays, it's so much easier to start a business. I was talking to a gentleman in Australia yesterday. I was actually on his podcast, and he's like, "Oh, it's so easy to start a business." I think he's got like 100 online businesses, and it really costs you nothing. And you don't necessarily have to have employees or assets or inventory. I mean, you can pretty much start an online business without investing too much
Yeah.
and be really successful. Now, turning around and trying to sell that online business might be another thing if you don't have the solid infrastructure and you don't have, the business built on what I call the 6 Ps, then you might not be able to maximize value. But anybody really, not anybody, let me not say anybody, somebody who has that entrepreneurial spirit, really it's much easier now to start a business than it's ever been before.
Yeah.
And I think, again, the bottom line is look around us, there's opportunity everywhere, but unfortunately there's also people walking around like zombies that they're not really, conscious, and they're not really looking at things and thinking about things about what can I do? How can I solve this problem? And some of the best entrepreneurs in the world are the ones who solve the biggest problems.
And entrepreneurship breeds entrepreneurship, right? Like, I have a coffee shop store, right? Like I have an online coffee company that I built on Shopify. So because
do you?
Yeah, because the people who built Shopify solved a problem that needed to be solved, and as a result, it allows me to solve a problem that needs to be solved, right? And like somebody wrote a tweet the other day, and it was unfortunate the way that the response to it. They said like, look, you can start a business today for under $500. Like it's a wondrous time to be able to do this, and a lot of people like replied back with a really negative sort of sense of like, this is not true. I'm like, and I didn't even want to get into the conversation. I'm like, no, I legitimately started a business for $70 and it has immediately become profitable. So it is totally possible to do this stuff, which is why, like I said, I'm excited. But I'm curious on your thought, Michelle. Where do we need to bring this? Like, is this something that we're missing in education? Like getting people to recognize that this is a new way of building society and like opportunity?
Yeah, I want to address that two ways. I've had many of these online companies come to me. One was a coffee company, and not yours.
Not for sale yet. Not for sale yet.
But the problem is with some of these a lot of these online businesses is they don't have any infrastructure. They don't have any people. And if you go through my 6 Ps, which I think we should, that's in my book, and really educate your listeners, the number 1 P is people. And this coffee company had no people. They had subcontractors, and they didn't want to let their independent contractors go along with the business because they want to keep those independent contractors for their next online business.
Okay.
So that's a problem. When you're building a business, any business, whether it's online, SaaS business, brick and mortar, you got to have an infrastructure. If you don't build it with an infrastructure, number one, how sustainable are you really going to be? And can you scale? And more importantly, can you sell and maximize value? Yes, maybe you can sell to somebody else who wants an online business and they're going to work that business as their job, but you're never really going to be able to maximize value because you don't have people. You don't really have the infrastructure of what a business really operates upon. And so you're really never going to maximize value. So all businesses, SaaS, online, brick and mortar, all businesses need to really follow the 6P infrastructure that I talk about in my book, Exit Rich. To answer your question is, where do we educate these people? I think it starts in school. It needs to start in school. I'm educating my daughter, that you want to make money. You don't just go work for money. Let's get creative. Let's get entrepreneurial, that entrepreneurial spirit. What can you do? Well, you got all these toys sitting in the attic. Why don't we box up those toys and sell them.
Yeah.
We can sell them. Or, we can donate them. But anyway, we really got to get our kids thinking about entrepreneurship early on. And I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but, I'm actually interviewing Dr. Needle Cobain later today. And he is president of Lazy Boy, I think Panera Bread Company, and about a bunch of other companies. And he's also president of High Point University. And Dr. Needle Cobain has probably got one of the only schools that I feel really teaches entrepreneurship, has classes where they teach you how to go out there and start a business, buy a business, what business ownership, what business entrepreneurship is all about, how to go out there and solve problems. And I think it just starts, as our kids are little, to start teaching them, kind of like Rich Dad Poor Dad, by Robert Kiyosaki.
Yeah.
Just really teaching our kids to think differently. It's all about really thinking differently.
Well, and even the opportunity today, like you talked about before, like this is an incredible world that we can do things in a different way. Even if we look at some of those sort of the even Rich Dad Poor Dad as an example, effectively needs a new edition because the world has adjusted, right? There's other folks that are, like, we call it the new rich, right? It's
we didn't have
different...
Bitcoin. There wasn't no Bitcoin back then.
That's right.
When Rich Dad Poor Dad was read. And I'm so fortunate to have Sharon Lechter, who co-authored Rich Dad Poor Dad with Robert Kiyosaki, as my co-author for my book Exit Rich. Because Sharon Lechter is a New York Times bestselling author 5 times from Rich Dad Poor Dad, plus a CPA, financial literacy expert, and he advisor to many different presidents. And she teaches financial literacy as well. But yeah, they need another version because there was no online back then.
Yeah.
There was no Bitcoin back then. There were not a lot of things. It's so much easier now, I believe, to become an entrepreneur than ever before.
And even if we look at, like great books like Built to Last, which were used as effectively like a tome of describing the potential for taking on a blue ocean strategy in an opportunity. Well, if you look at almost every one of those stories, effectively turned over, and they've actually shed that portion of the business in order to survive. So
Right.
that Built to Last wasn't built to last because the world adjusted. No offense to, of course, Jim Collins and like the folks that did it. It was at a point in time, if you take the context, it was right. But we have to adjust context to availability of the world today, right?
Right.
So you talked about the P's, right? So having 6P method, people is number one. If you don't mind, Michelle, let's kind of brush through what the 6P method is.
And let's spend a little bit of time on people, because this is where a lot of e-commerce businesses, online companies are getting it wrong. And you don't build a business, you build people, and people build a business, right? If you want a business that's going to be sustainable, scalable, and one day sellable, you do have to have the people in your organization. And a lot of online businesses have independent contractors, but they love their independent contractors, so they want to keep them and take them to the next new, business that they're building. So you really have to have that people component. I always say that entrepreneurs, and that's one reason, that coffee shop, they wanted a lot of money, and the coffee business, not coffee shop, coffee business, they wanted a lot of money for it, but they had no solid infrastructure. And it had only been in business for a few years. So there really wasn't much history there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
We're talking about how in Exit Rich is all about building a sustainable business that's scalable. So people is huge. A lot of entrepreneurs, they want to do everything themselves. They want to control everything. And I always say you can't grow unless you let go of the control. So entrepreneurs really need to focus on their strengths, hire their weaknesses. But the biggest thing is put the right people in the right seats. And if you are building your business to sell and not just building your business to pocket as much money as you possibly can, then build that solid infrastructure. And in the people P, you really need to ask the question, who? Who handles customer service, marketing, legal, accounting, manufacturing, distribution, environmental, etc. The list goes on and on. the clue, Eric, is that you should never be next to the who, because you really want to build the business without you. A lot of these online businesses, e-commerce businesses, they don't have any people.
Right.
They don't. And that makes it very, very, very difficult or harder to sell, because the buyers who are going to pay the money that these e-commerce businesses want, because they want a multiple of their EBITDA, which is understandable, but the buyers are not going to run that business. So you
That's
have to
right.
have the people in place that have been running the business, are going to continue to run the business. And you can't just take your people with you and leave the business with no people, because now you have no business. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. No, and I'm very close to this as I look at like how do I build this for scale, and you can see how the trap is easy to fall into of like, look, I can just do more stuff and subcontract it out, and I can hire
Yep.
people off Upwork, I can do whatever,
Yep.
but that doesn't build sustainability, and it ultimately doesn't build long-term value in what like measurable, sellable value, even just measurable growth value. It may look like it's working because the graph seems to be going up and to the right, but the
Yeah.
moment you break the system, the moment you slow down or change, everything can go in the wrong direction.
Right. And then let's say you have independent contractors or subcontractors, Eric, and you're paying them this, but then a buyer says, I really like the business, I like what you do, but we need to have employees. And employees are going to cost this. So that's going to automatically subtract from your EBITDA, which
Yeah.
is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. And that's going to lower your sales price immediately, because buyers pay a multiple of EBITDA. So you really got, I don't care if it's an online business, I don't care what kind of business it is, you got to build the infrastructure. And that's why so many of these e-commerce businesses are not selling, or if they are selling, they're not selling for maximum value. I could sell them for a lot more if they had a solid infrastructure in place. That makes sense?
Absolutely. No, and this is a good lesson for folks. And I'm always amazed too when you look at you look at these different SaaS companies and different e-commerce businesses. You have to very much use that lens to look at how they grew to the point where they're at today, because look.
Do you think Facebook has grown with independent contractors and subcontractors?
Exactly.
Do you think Google has grown with independent contractors and subcontractors? Facebook does have companies that they contract with that have the employees, they employ the employees, but
Right.
they still have people, you know what I mean? They just don't have a bunch of subcontractors and independent contractors that come and go. So any of these businesses you look at, they have a foundation, they have an infrastructure. So people is number one. Number two, because here's the bottom line too. If it's just the owner, like in this coffee business, it really was just the owner. So they wanted to take everybody else with them, and buyers don't want a job.
That's
And
right.
that really is a job. And many business owners, instead of creating a business, they've created a glorified job in which they go to work at every day versus a business that actually works for them. So people's number one, product is number two. So product is your industry, your product. It is your service. You have to ask, is my industry, product, service on the way up or on the way out? Meaning do you have an Amazon and you're at the prime of your game? Or do you have a Blockbuster and you're about to go bust? And so product is huge. There's a lot of industries that were dying before COVID that are now crushing it, and vice versa. There's industries before COVID that were killing it and now dying. So I always tell my clients to ask these three transformational questions during product, because remember, 70% of businesses are going out of business after being in business 10 years because they stopped innovating. So in order to innovate under product, ask yourself these three questions. Number one, what business are you in? Amazon did this in the 90s. They said, they asked themselves, what business are we in? And they said, we're booksellers. We fulfill book orders. And then Amazon said, and this is a question your listeners, not your owners, your listeners should be asking, what is your core competency? What do we do really, really well, better than everybody else? What is our USP, our unique selling proposition? And Amazon said, we do fulfillment better than everybody else. So then the third obvious question is, what business should we be in? should. And Amazon said, we need to be in a fulfillment business, not just fulfilling books, but fulfilling everything for everybody. Now, Amazon's not really a huge innovative company, are they? What have they made? What have they innovated?
It's there are things, but in effect, they took on processes that nobody else wanted to
They
take
took on
on.
processes that nobody else took on.
Yeah.
They figured out what they were really good at, which was fulfillment. They're not out there making the widgets. They're not manufacturing the widgets. They're not creating, the next best cell phone. They're not out there creating. They're out there fulfilling what everybody else creates. Yes or no? Correct?
Absolutely, yeah.
Those 3 transformational questions is really what transformed Amazon from a small bookseller to a multi-billion-dollar worldwide conglomerate that they are today. My good friend Jeff Hoffman was standing in the airport line to try to, to get his boarding pass so he could board his plane. This was decades ago. And he said he waited almost 2 hours to get to the agent to hand him this little teeny thin piece of paper so he could get on the plane. And Jeff said, I just missed my plane because you're handing me a piece of paper. And Jeff went out and created the airport kiosk. The kiosk that prints your boarding passes so you don't have to wait in a line and miss your plane. That's innovation. But as in the case of Amazon, you don't always have to be the creator. And now Amazon is the creator of fulfillment, right? Because they do it better than everybody else. But that's what they asked themselves back in the 90s. What do we do so well? And they said, we do fulfillment. And that's how they got so big. So all business owners really should go back and ask themselves those 3 questions. I don't care what vertical you're in, e-commerce businesses, ask yourself, what business am I in? What do I do really well, better than everybody else? And what business should we be in? Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And it's interesting that it always sounds simple, but it's a very difficult introspective thing for a business owner to do, to really evaluate what's the actual business we're in and what's the thing that we can do, right?
It really is. And a lot of times, Eric, you have to have an outsider's perspective because, like I said, when you're in your fog, it's foggy. And a lot of business owners are transactional versus transformational. They're working in the business, in the day-to-day, putting out fires constantly, that they don't really have time to sit there and think about, what business am I in? What do I do really, really well? Yeah. And did you ever watch the movie The Founder, based upon the McDonald's story?
Yes, yeah. It was Michael Keaton was the star of that one. But yeah, really, really good, good movie.
Do you remember when Michael Keaton, Ray Kroc, was in the bank trying to borrow money because he had already taken a lien out, mortgage out on his personal house?
Right.
He wasn't making any money. And the banks were like, I'm not going to lend you any more money. He walks out, and then a gentleman that followed him out, I forget his name, he said, what business are you in? Yeah. And Ray Kroc said, I'm in the restaurant business. He's like, no. Well, what business are you in? And he finally said, you need to be in the real estate business. You are not in the restaurant business, not in the hamburger business. You have to be in the real estate business. You have to buy the land, build the buildings, lease them to the franchisees. When the franchisees are not compliant, you void their franchise agreement and you get another franchisee in there. And then these franchisees are paying you rent. Those questions right there is what got Ray Kroc to have the leverage over the McDonald brothers to basically take their company away from them. Yeah. But it's the reason why McDonald's is the largest holding company, real estate holding company in the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So a lot of times you made a very valid point, Eric, is that it's hard for a business owner to have the introspect to do that themselves. You got to have an outsider's perspective like Ray Kroc did. Ray Kroc would have never figured that out on his own.
And the interesting thing too, when we look, like, let's take the greater story out of it, but like in general, like, so that business effectively became what McDonald's was, not what it was built from, because they couldn't answer those 3 questions. I don't think, like, they didn't have the vision to do this bigger thing. Right. Versus now Ray, through this, also third-party help, was able to really see what the future of the growing business is, which is, and it's funny.
The two brothers did not want to let go of the control. Yeah. You will never grow without letting go of the control. The reason they tried to have multiple locations, but they wanted to control everything. And then they all fell apart. So they're like, okay, we're just going to focus on our one restaurant. But you got to let go of the control. You got to get good people. You got to get good integrators. You go back to the P of people. You don't build the business. You build people and they build the business. Ray Kroc got the right people.
Yeah.
Ray Kroc didn't do it all by himself. Right? So the third P is processes. And I could still use the founder movie based upon to illustrate processes.
Yeah.
Because back in the 50s, most business owners get this wrong, Eric. Most business owners design the processes around their own agenda, not around the customer experience. McDonald Brothers back in 1950s said, we want to build a fast food restaurant. We want our processes to be centered around, be designed with the customer experience in mind. So do you remember when the McDonald Brothers went out to the empty tennis courts?
That's right.
With all their employees, TikTok, drew it all on the tennis court, had their employees moving around, bumping into each other. One of the McDonald Brothers was on the ladder, really orchestrating how they move, and kept redesigning it until they really had a symphony of systems and processes designed with the customer experience in mind. The customer experience the McDonald's brothers came up with is we want our customers to experience great tasting food that's hot, fast, 30 seconds or less. Even though those processes were designed back in the 50s and tweaked along the way, you can eat it at McDonald's anywhere in the world and really get the same experience.
Yeah.
Right? Have you ever dealt with a company where you have to talk to 3 people, 4 people, 10 people to tell them the exact same story of your problem to try to get some resolve? Banks are notorious for this. Pharmacies, retail, social media companies are notorious for this. That they are not designing the processes with the customer experience in mind. They're designing customers to alienate us and piss us off. I want to do business with them. And here's the bottom line. If you don't create raving fans, then your competition will. And you're not going to create raving fans by having broken processes, not designed with the customer experience in mind. So processes must be designed with the customer experience in mind. They must be productive, efficient, and they must be well documented. Policy and procedure manuals. McDonald's can fire somebody on the front line and hire somebody within 30 minutes, have them working because they have SOP checklists. It's easy to follow, understand, and implement. So you got to have those policy and procedure manuals, those SOP checklists, employee handbooks, non-competes, all the documentation. You never sell a business without all this documentation. Plus, you need it to scale. You got to have these processes to scale. So the fourth P, and this is the highest value driver, Eric. So businesses that have an EBIT of under $1 million will typically sell for 1 to 4 times multiple. Probably 1 to 3, more like it.
Yep.
Businesses with over $1 million in EBITDA will typically go for 4, 5, and up. However, the more proprietary assets you have, so the fourth P is proprietary. The more proprietary assets you have, synergies you have, the more we can sell your company for. It'll get you a much higher value. There's 6 pillars for proprietary. Number 1 is branding. The more well branded your company is, the more I can sell it for, as long as your brand is relevant in the mind of the consumers. Is Blockbuster relevant in the mind of consumers? Is anybody going to pay money for Blockbuster brand? No, because they went bust.
That's right.
The most valuable brand in the world is, do you know? The biggest brand, the most valuable brand in the world is?
That's a good question. Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I'm looking at a Nike sweater in the back. There's an example of one that jumps to mind, but I'm
No,
curious.
they're not. They're in the top 10, but they're not the most valuable.
Yeah. Oh boy.
We've mentioned it several times on the show today.
Oh my, that would be our friends at Amazon.
Apple.
No.
Yeah, the other A. The
of
other
course.
A.
Yeah. When I
Apple.
say I look at a MacBook and an iPhone and I own
Yeah,
everybody
me too.
surrounded by Apple devices. They're actually it's such a part of it. I wouldn't think of going outside, but it's funny. That is hugely a brand impact, right?
It is. I mean, the brand alone is worth $259 billion.
Yeah.
Billion. That's just the brand. That's not the assets, inventory, cash flow, real estate, receivables. That's just the brand alone. So build your brand. And then the other thing is trademarks. Trademark your company name. Trademark your slogan. I trademarked Exit Rich.
Yeah.
Trademark your podcast. But here's the big mistake the business owners make when trademarking. They go and they get a trademark for the state that they're setting up the business. So if they're in California, they start a business in California and get a California trademark. But then they go to GoDaddy, they make sure they get that .com, but they never check the federal database to make sure that that name is available.
Right.
And I've seen clients in business for years and all of a sudden receive a cease and desist letter and they have to stop using that company name. Yeah. And, I've seen clients hire an attorney and spend lots of money and end up losing. So go spend $1,500 to $2,000 and protect your proprietary stuff, and even products, Eric, not just your name and slogans and what's unique to you, even products. And we have a client whose business we're selling in the $50 to $60 million range. They have 12 different products. Each one has a different federal trademark. Right. Each one is exclusive to Walmart, exclusive to Target, exclusive to different retail chains. Strategics will pay more money. When buyers, there's 5 different types of buyers. When buyers look at buying businesses, they look at synergies. What synergies is going to catapult my current business to the next level? They're buying synergies. Patents are huge. If you've ever watched Shark Tank, every single shark always asks, do you have a patent on that? Do you have a patent pending? Do you have a utility patent? In fact, their offers are contingent upon patents. Right. We once sold a business for $18 million, and that business was not really making money, but they had 18 patents. Contracts are another one that's really big. Manufacturing contracts, distribution contracts. Here's another thing about e-commerce businesses, online businesses. They don't have people. Some of them have processes. It's iffy. Most of them never, ever have contracts. Like coffee company I was selling, had a manufacturing company, no contracts. Had somebody else making their coffee, no contract. You really need those contracts so you have protection and the buyer buying the business knows that this manufacturing relationship can continue on. This distribution company can continue on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So contracts are huge, vendor contracts, distribution, manufacturing, any type of exclusive contracts. Franchisors who have franchisee contracts are really valuable. Client contracts are extremely valuable because buyers want to make sure that there's revenue coming into the business, especially the contracts, and e-commerce businesses are good at this, getting a subscription model for reoccurring revenue. And when you have reoccurring revenue, a buyer will pay a higher multiple for subscription models. Here's a caveat to contracts. I have never met a business owner in over 20 years that actually has a transferability language in their contract that says this contract is transferable to the new entity.
Oh, okay.
And about 99% of all sales in the United States are asset sales, not stock sales. And so if your buyer refuses to do a stock sale and your clients refuse to do consent to transfer, your deal can fall apart. So you need to make sure you have that transferability language. The other thing is databases. Facebook paid $19 billion for WhatsApp, and WhatsApp was hemorrhaging.
Yeah.
But
they were not profitable on that purchase.
They were beyond not profitable, and they were hemorrhaging, but they had 1 billion users. So they had a synergy that Facebook wanted to buy. Facebook knew they could monetize an ROI, that investment. Celebrity endorsements are big. If you look at Rooms to Go, who's the celebrity there? Cindy Crawford.
Right.
Have you ever seen her in any other furniture company? No. And then we have a client who's got products endorsed by Oprah. Well, Oprah's like the queen of everything. So strategics who have some of our products would pay more money for that Oprah relationship because, it's all about relationship capital, because they want to get their products in front of Oprah. Same thing with radio personalities like Glenn Beck, the Kid Craddock show.
Yeah.
These celebrities and radio personalities can only endorse one vertical at a time. Otherwise, they lose credibility. Jennifer Aniston's face is all over Aveeno. You don't see her face on any other skincare line.
Right.
And then e-commerce businesses, back to my e-commerce businesses. When they have the top positions on Wayfair, it's Etsy, Amazon, eBay, Modern. That shoots up in price because that's prime real estate the strategics want to get their products in those placements. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the new real estate is placement on page and in research results now instead of just physical location in the town.
Absolutely. Probably even more valuable than physical location in the town.
Yeah.
That's where consumers are shifting to, because most consumers, because of Amazon, whoever makes it easiest for the consumer to do business is the company's going to win. Amazon wins because they make it so easy. But the pandemic has also changed the way consumers purchase products and services now. Walmart and Target did not have a membership in a program where you could order online and they deliver groceries to your doorstep. It's because Amazon acquired Whole Foods, and Whole Foods has that program.
The interesting thing too, like you talked about this, like every business is now a global business in effect. And what we've talked about, like these brands are no longer, like, the reach is not limited, but nor is they have to effectively go beyond their street corner. It's almost a responsibility as a business to be able to go as
there
far
is
as you
no
can.
limit anymore where you can do business. The limit is right here in your mind.
Now,
and then the 50, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, sorry. Yes, I just realized I wanted to double check, because I know we talked about, so we're 5 P's in, and first of all, I gotta say, Michelle, this is incredible. Like, this is, if anybody hasn't already started writing this down, number one, they're gonna buy the book, and if they don't, I'll buy the bloody book for them. They need to, because Exit Rich is a fantastic book. But like, you are sharing a ton of really, really strong lessons here, and I want to thank you as we're going through this, because it's a rare treat to have somebody that can really be as informed and share as much, even though obviously there's a lot more that's in the book than just simply listing out what we're talking about here.
Right. Thank you, Eric. And so the 5th P is patrons. Patrons is your customer base. And most businesses follow the 80-20 rule, where 80% of their business comes from 20% of their clients. And you got to be very careful on customer concentration. What you really want is customer diversification. And e-commerce businesses get in trouble doing this as well. Coffee company that I was talking about, 99.9% of all their sales came from Amazon. What happens if their relationship with Amazon fails? Then they just lost their entire business. So it's not just, customers that you have customer concentration in, it's also the marketing channel that you're using. And if all of your sales are through Amazon, now I know there's a lot of Amazon sellers out there that only sell on Amazon. And that's okay, but it's risky. So when a buyer looks at that, they're going to want to mitigate their risk, because what happens if Amazon decides not to do business with you for whatever reason?
Right. Or Amazon decides to get in the business you're in and effectively evacuate that channel for you now, right?
Exactly. So you should always be diversified in your client base and how you get clients. So if you're getting all your clients through Amazon, you gotta be very careful. You need to have multiple congruent resources, like your own website, like maybe Etsy or something else. You have to have different resources, groceries, being in a grocery store, etc. So anyway, this is customer concentration. I'll just give you a quick case study. We had a business, oil manufacturing business we were selling, that had 65 to 70% of the revenue tied up in the BP contract. We appraised this company for $9.8 million. We had over 550 buyers. We narrowed it down to 12 LOIs, letter of intent. Every single letter of intent had a condition in there that if you lose BP, then we're not paying you this, this, and this, and this, because they're going to mitigate their risk.
Yeah.
However, we found a strategic that had very similar products and services, and a strategic didn't care about the risk, because the reward for them was far greater on the upside, because they've been trying to get their products and services into BP for decades and never could get their feet in the door. So they're like, oh, this is perfect. We're in there with this company we just acquired. Now we can get our other products and services in there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So they were willing to pay $15 million for a company that was appraised for $9.8 million, $15 million for 70% of the business, which was 126% more than the appraised price for the company for 70%. So we can sell a business with customer concentration. It just makes it much more difficult. We have to find that buyer of a needle in a haystack, type of situation.
Yeah, that was a real unexpected value, but it's an important one. Like it's hard to match those, but and also as well, like you talked about before, like the outside view in is the only way in which they will discover that, because if they're simply looking at their own internal channel, that's all they can be focused on. How do they possibly seek out a buyer who's looking for a bi-directional access to that channel and sees a greater value than they even realize they've got? So that's
and sometimes it doesn't always work out. I mean,
right.
we had a media marketing company that we're selling in 10, 15 million range. They have 5 clients, Eric, only 5. And during the process, they lost 2 of the 5. And the reason they have 5 is because they were casinos. They catered to casinos. They did marketing for the casinos. It was such a risky business, though, because casinos would do the math. They bring on a new, a new agent that makes the decisions, and they would do the math and say, oh, we can do this in-house cheaper, and fire the marketing company. So they lost 2 clients out of the 5. The revenues dropped in half. Their EBITDA dropped in half. They were no longer sellable. I ended up having to merge them with another media and advertising marketing company. So it doesn't always work out. So you want to make sure you have customer diversification. And then the last P, the most important P to all entrepreneurs, is profits. And everybody's like, Michelle, why do you put profits last? The reason I put profits last is because lack of profits is never the problem. Lack of profits is never the problem. If you're not making money, lack of profits is not the problem. It's a symptom of not operating on one of the other 5 Ps. I have clients that come to me all the time and say, Michelle, I have a profit problem. I'm like, no, you have a people problem, or no, you have a process problem. You don't have lack of profits is not a problem. It's a symptom. If you are running your business on all 5 Ps, I can promise you, you're going to make money.
WhatsApp was a great example. They were far from profit. They were as far from profit as you can get while still be considered a business worth buying. But they had, of the other 5 Ps, a majority of what was needed to bring value to their buyer.
Right.
That's incredible.
So that's the 6 Ps. That's your infrastructure. And you can see how this infrastructure on the 6 Ps, Eric, can work for e-commerce businesses, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing, like you said, these practices apply to brick and mortar, they apply to e-commerce, they apply to locals, to globals, like they're
the SaaS, right?
The methods play out, and the importance is you have to just look at the overall methodology and make sure it all comes together. So, look, with that, I know, Michelle, we're coming up to time, and this has been fantastic. So, Exit Rich is I highly recommend people need to get this. If you're at all involved in business, even if you're not thinking today that you're building towards exit, we have to understand we all are, right? Viability and sustainability is maybe your exit. Maybe it's your own personal exit. Are you creating something that's sustainable to be worthwhile to the next person that's going to take it over? Even if it's not necessarily a sale, it could be the next CEO. So we'll have links to get the book. And
Eric, can I tell everybody the value that they get if they buy the book before launch date?
Absolutely. That would be fantastic. Yeah.
And I'm sure your listeners want to hear about the extra golden nuggets, the extra value we're offering.
I like this even better.
So Exit Rich launches in June, towards the end of June. And Steve Forbes has endorsed Exit Rich, saying it's a gold mine for all entrepreneurs, as most entrepreneurs leave way too much money on the table when they're selling their business. Kevin Harrington, the original Shark on Shark Tank, wrote the foreword. Sharon Lechter is my co-author. So you don't have to wait till June to read Exit Rich. You can go to exitrichbook.com now for $24.79, which is less than Amazon. We will email you the digital download so you can start reading today. We will send the hardcover to your doorstep to anybody that lives in the United States for no additional shipping cost. We will give you a lifetime membership into the Exit Rich Book Club, where there's video content and me doing transformational questions and, talking about strategies and techniques and doing deep dives in all these different things that I teach over the last 20 years, plus documents to run your business, documents to sell your business. We have sample employee handbooks, non-competes, org charts, policy and procedure manuals. We also have sample letter of intent, purchase agreements, due diligence checklist, closing documents. All of these are there, not just for your review, but you can download the templates and start using them. If you went to your attorney to try to recreate all these documents, it would cost you over $30,000. And they're all available to you just for buying the book at $24.79. Plus, we'll give you a 30-day membership into Club CEOs, which is an entrepreneur mastermind that we started to really help business owners build that sustainable, scalable, and when they're ready, sellable business so they too can exit rich. And that's at exitrichbook.com.
If you got $24.79 to spend, which everybody does, then go there.
Yeah, because if you're going to McDonald's,
save the burgers, buy the book.
Save the Happy Meal, save the quarter pounder with cheese.
Well, I can proudly say I was lucky enough, and thank you to your team. Actually sent a preview, and I read it. It's fantastically written, beautiful lessons. Like you said, you and Sharon did a great job in co-authoring this. And look, the book alone, well worth the value that's attached on that cover price. But the fact that you go far beyond it with what you're given and sharing, I really appreciate it. So yeah, definitely, folks, do go there and get the Exit Rich book. This is a must-have. And like I said, it's a manual that everybody doesn't even realize they need until they start to read it. And don't wait until you're looking to sell before you start to try and look backwards at what you needed to do along the way. It's like a manual for success. So thank you for bringing this to market.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Eric. It's been an absolute pleasure. My main website, if anybody wants to contact me, is SeilerTucker.com.
Perfect.
SeilerTucker.com and then exitrichbook.com.
Excellent. Yeah, and I'll make sure I got links to the show notes. Michelle Seiler Tucker, this has been an absolute pleasure, and thank you so much. I appreciate it, and I wish you all the best with the official launch in June. I'm looking forward to my hard copy cover arriving at my doorstep so I can put it on the bookshelf, but I'll have read it from end to end in the meantime anyways in advance, because it's an absolute must read for sure. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Eric. It's been a pleasure.